Testing. Oh, there we go.
I think so.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the 2023 TCS New York City Marathon Expert Training Kickoff Panel. You're the lucky ones who get to be here for the very first session. Today's panel is going to cover all things nutrition, including when to take nutrition during your race and runs, and what to eat before or after the runs. We'll be tapping into our wonderful panelists' expertise tonight to help you get prepared for your marathon training journey as well as race day. Let's get some logistical information out of the way before we start talking to our panelists. So if anyone here is in need of an assistive listening system, we have those available. If you do not request one already, please see my colleagues over at BIP Pickup and they can assist you with that. Accessible and gender neutral restrooms are available around the corner behind us. And closed captioning will be available today on the live streams on our YouTube page. They will also be available on the recording that's provided after the event. Just please note that the closed captioning is auto-generated, so it may not always be 100% correct. And I did want to mention that this event is being live streamed on our YouTube page, the New York Roadrunners YouTube page, the New York Roadrunners Facebook page. So big hello and welcome to all those folks joining us virtually. And we're going to be taking questions from the panelists later in the panel. So we just ask that you please hold those panel questions until towards the end. One of our coaches, Coach David, will go around with the mic when you have questions. And we'll also be taking questions from the live stream. So please feel free to add those in the YouTube live stream or the Facebook live stream. And for those of you sitting behind this wall who may not know, there's Gatorade available right here, so please feel free to come around and grab one if you'd like. Okay, let's get started. So my name is Saman Wakad. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Social Responsibility Specialist here at New York Roadrunners, and I will be moderating today's conversation. So it's my pleasure because I also get to learn a lot. For those folks who are joining us here or on the live streams who are low vision or blind, I do want to mention that I am a South Asian woman. I am wearing a navy tech shirt and jacket with the New York Roadrunners and New Balance logos on the front, and I'm wearing a headscarf and glasses as well. So we'll move into introducing our panelists. And yes, I do need note cards. There's a lot of great information on here. So to my left is Steve Mura. Steve is an RRCA and V.02 certified coach. And he can tell us what that means. He's been working at New York Roadrunners for 8 years, so he's one of my colleagues. He's been coaching runners across the world, virtually and in person during that time. Steve has completed the TCS New York City Marathon multiple times with a marathon PR of 3:03 and a half PR of 1:24. Steve heads up New York Roadrunners pace team, and this year he'll be pacing the 4-hour group for the race.
Thank you. That is loud. Thank you so much. I am a white male. I have a blue shirt on, no hair on my head, but it's all on my face somehow. I'm working on it.
Thank you, Steve. And to Steve's left, we have Amy Stevens. Amy is a registered dietitian, certified specialist in sports nutrition, eating disorder specialist, and a competitive runner. She has over 20 years of experience working with amateur and high-performing Olympic-level athletes to achieve their sports performance goals using the latest science-backed approaches. Currently, Amy serves as a team dietitian for Empire Elite Track Club, which is a high-level group of athletes focused on making the U.S. Olympic team and NYU's track and field team. Amy this year qualified for and ran the Boston Marathon, and she is planning to run the 2023 TCS New York City Marathon as well.
I'm a white female, and I have long brown hair, and I'm wearing a black track shirt that says Empire on it.
Thank you, Amy. And last but not least, to Amy's left, we have Jason Mikowski. Jason is a board-certified sports dietitian, a registered clinical exercise physiologist at Hospital for Special Surgery, HHS, if you hear that mentioned throughout the evening. So he's at Hospital for Special Surgery's Tisch Sports Performance Center. He's received a Master's of Science degree in Applied Physiology and Nutrition from Teachers College at Columbia University. And as a member of the U.S. Olympic Committee Sports Dietitian Registry, he has served our nation's athletes. He has also provided sports nutrition services for 2 Division I NCAA schools as an instructor of the sports nutrition practicum at Teachers College.
Hi, I am a white male with a quarter zip shirt on with HSS logo, and I am wearing glasses.
Thank you for that. And I just want to point out that Steve has nothing to do with the Olympics. As I was reading the bios, I was like,
Ambition
wait.
is part of it, maybe ambition?
I obviously am not in the counting because, these are experts, not me. So let's get started. I do want to mention again for folks who may have just joined us, we'll be taking questions towards the end. So if you have questions, we'd love to get them. Just please hold on to them towards the end of the panel. So we are about 16 weeks out from the 2023 TCS New York City Marathon. I saw some surprised faces here. Hello. 16 weeks. Can we get a show of hands on who all here is scheduled to run this marathon this year? Okay, packed house. Wonderful, wonderful. Jason and I apparently are not running. So
I'm just running after my kids.
that's awesome. Great practice. Okay, so with it being that we're 16 weeks out from the marathon, we're going to start with asking our panelists to tell us briefly what's the most important thing that a runner should be considering right now. So starting with Coach Steve, how is it that a coach can help, and where should folks be right now in their training?
I think first, who's first TCS New York City Marathon? Who's running the first time ever? Awesome. So a lot of people, first time. I want everyone to have a training plan at this point. What are you doing for a training plan? Where's it coming from? I don't want you to run out there and just run randomly miles, because that's how we get injured. That's how we overtrain too much, too fast, too soon. Find a training plan. It could be with a coach one-on-one. It could be, we have a coaching plan at New York Road Owners you can use. There's Empire, I'm sure, has a training plan. There's hundreds of training plans out there. Find one that fits your lifestyle, what you're running currently. Look at that training plan of where you are now in your training, not where you want to be or where you were 3 years ago at your prime. It's where we're starting now. That coach is she mentioned, it can help you get you to that finish line feeling healthy and injury-free. So also use those coaches along the way to motivate you, coach you along the way. But you really want to find a training plan right now and gradually get those runs in. So hopefully you have been running throughout the summer, some base miles, and you can start those long runs in a few weeks and get some interval workouts. But finding a plan right now is the most important.
Great, thank you, Steve. So very important, make sure you have a training plan. Next, we'll ask Amy. So what would you say are some best practices for figuring out the body's preferred nutrition 16 weeks out?
So I would say right now it's your trial period. Right food at the right time. That's what you're really focusing on. You want to start practicing with different food options, whether it's before you run, you want to try some different foods and see how your body feels. That will help you prevent any kind of GI issues or you could be a little bit more certain how you're going to feel on race day, and you won't have to be worrying about how your gut will feel or how your energy level will be. Try out different things before your run. So you could do oatmeal, bagel, toast, waffles. I prefer waffles with jelly. That seems to work for me. But try different things. And if your friend is doing something amazing, maybe you want to try that. There's lots of different options. A common issue I hear is that on race day is that athletes had too much or too little food. So now is a great time to really dial that in. See what works, write it down if you have to, and see how your body feels. Also, now is a great time to try different gels and different products. Initially, when I started running, I was using the Goo products, and then one of my friends gave me a Martin gel. And it was awesome. I really liked how that felt. It kept my energy going. I think on this course, you guys are going to have science and sport. So maybe it's a good time to start trying that kind of gel, because those are bigger gels, and you don't have to carry as many. If you know that they're going to be on the course, I think there's going to be 2 options to get that. So practice what's on the course. Different marathons offer different foods, so make sure you know what's available to you. And now is the time to make the changes based on how your body feels. You don't want to be doing that in September or even in October. You want to dial this in now so you could focus on those long runs. So that's what I would say for now.
Great, thank you, Amy. So right now is the perfect time for trial and error when it comes to nutrition, and not wait another 8 weeks or so. Moving on, Jason, what would you say is the thing that folks should be considering right now in regards to nutrition?
I mean, I think everything that Amy said is spot on. I think, is this not loud enough? Maybe I'll speak louder. Is that better? I'm just going to yell. All right. I'm good at yelling. All right. So the other aspect, so I think around training, super important to dial in. The other thing is your overall daily fueling is super important. You may not be training as hard right now, but in about 4, 6, 8 weeks, you'll be training much more. You'll be running many more miles. For many of you, it might be many more miles than you've ever done. You might be a little hungrier than you've ever been. You might be a little more dehydrated in this weather than you've ever been. So acknowledge for yourself that you might need a little more fuel leading into these next number of weeks. Keep your energy up. If you start to notice any unusual fatigue throughout the day, elevated heart rate during the day when you're just at rest, kind of symptoms of overtraining or doing too much, and that maybe you're not fueling yourself well enough, acknowledge that you're going to be putting your body through some stresses it hasn't been in before, and make sure you're dialing in. Am I getting in adequate energy, carbs? Am I getting in adequate fuel, calories? Am I getting in adequate protein? Am I getting adequate hydration and electrolytes? So those are the things just to be mindful of, that as you ramp up with your training, that fuel needs to come with it. And just acknowledge that fact.
And Jason, would you recommend folks track that, like they write it down, log it somewhere on an app or a journal?
I think it's very individual. So some people are very I was an engineer and I switched careers. So I'm I like to write things down in Excel because that's fun for me. Not everybody else is like that. Some people are more intuitive. They kind of do RPE, they do how they feel. I think as long as you have some systematic way of checking in with yourself, whether it's physically with your body, whether it's looking at your calories and calories out if you prefer that method, just having a way to have that check-in with yourself throughout this process so you are fueling yourself adequately and not leaving yourself open to a potential injury or illness.
Okay, great. So have a system of checking in with yourself, whatever works for you, whether that's a journal or an app or a buddy who keeps you accountable. So as a couple of our experts have mentioned, everybody's different. Every body is different as well, and everyone's training is going to be different in regards to that. So Amy, let's start off with you this time. For the marathon distance, so we have 26.2 miles, right? Is there a formula that you can suggest on intake of gels, how many should be taken, when they should be taken?
Yeah, there's a lot of studies that have been done on the right amount of fuel to have during a marathon. I think the general guideline to start with is fuel early and often, and 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour is a really great recommendation. But that's not for everyone. Some people might need slightly less, and some people might need slightly more. I have athletes that go up to 100 grams of carb per hour. This is not something I would suggest doing on your next run. it takes time for your body to adapt. Just like it takes 4 months or so, or 5 months to train for a marathon, it takes your gut time to adapt to the load of carbohydrate that you're going to be taking in. So I would start on the lower end, maybe 30 grams per hour, and that can come from gels, it can come from goos, blocks, liquids. Gatorade has carbohydrate, and that's a great source to have. So it can come from a bunch of different sources, but 30 to 60 is a really great place to target. I also say like 30 every 30. 30 grams of carb every 30 minutes is a really easy way to remember that. And again, it's coming from your liquids as well as your gels. A gel is around 26, 28 grams of carb per gel. So it's like having about 2 of those per hour is a goal. Start with maybe 1 every 45 and see how you feel, and maybe you can like gradually increase it.
And a follow-up question to Amy. Since a lot of folks are running the marathon for the first time, they may not necessarily know what gels are. Can you briefly explain what a gel is?
Oh, absolutely. So gels, there's so many different options to choose from. There's every time I look at the websites, there's just more options. So gels are a concentrated amount of carbohydrate. When you're running, your body needs constant supply of energy, just like a car. If your car is going to be driving on a highway for a long period of time, it's using up gas. So you have to constantly be fueling in order to supply energy for your muscles. So to keep your energy going, you're going to need to constantly supply it on a regular basis. And the other thing I was going to mention, I think we're talking about it in a later question, but if you're going to run at faster speeds, your body is going to be using that carbohydrate. If you don't take it in, your body will not be able to sustain those faster paces.
Great, thank you for that definition. I want to make sure everybody understands what we were talking about here. So Jason, how would you recommend athletes with dietary restrictions get proper carbs into their body, whether they're training or on race day?
I think that's a really good question, and first we have to understand where that restriction of carbs is coming from. And so I'll just kind of, from the most common example, like let's say celiac disease, right? So you can't have gluten, or maybe you're just gluten sensitive. There's plenty of other carbohydrate options that don't have gluten. So things like sweet potato, things like brown rice or white rice. There's quinoa. There's lots of ways to get overall daily carbs in. A lot of the sports products you'll get typically don't have a lot of gluten in it. Sometimes you got to watch out for fillers. Sometimes there's some fillers or additives that might catch you with gluten, especially if you're very sensitive like celiac. But for the most part, they're going to mostly be kind of simple sugars that are digestible. So kind of in that context, you're pretty safe. If you're avoiding certain types of carbohydrates for other dietary reasons, you just have to be mindful of what might have them. So again, certain sports nutrition products are advertised as kind of a slow release if you are very sensitive to a very big spike of kind of sugars and it gets your stomach upset. There are ways to get slower release carbohydrate products, and you can seek those out if you are sensitive. But I would generally recommend go for more of the accessible, tried and true approaches first. Make sure it works for you. And then if you're having issues, you can kind of go down those other pathways.
Thank you, Jason. And Coach Steve, when you're coaching athletes, how do you have them practice nutrition, and how do you have them practice nutrition, and how does it affect race day?
I look at practicing nutrition like we're practicing running. So I think running is an interesting sport. Is that me? Okay. I look at running. I think running is interesting because unlike you go out and you practice basketball, you're practicing baseball, right? You go to practices, but running, we're out training. We think of it as training, right? Well, I want to kind of change that. It's like we're practicing running, so we're going to practice the mileage, but we're also going to practice eating on the runs. We're going to practice drinking on the run. We're going to practice our shoes, our shirt. So every time you head out the door, think of that and how long is your run? Is it maybe more than 90 minutes? Maybe you should bring some gel or some goos or something like that. So you're going to start slowly, like Amy was saying, is taking one gel maybe on a short run to see how it affects your stomach. If you know maybe that SIS does not work on you, try a different brand. I think you said there's like 20 different brands out there and different flavors. Some good flavors, some not so good flavors. So figure out what works for you and then how often take it. Do it in slow steps. You don't go out and run 20 miles. You go run 5 miles first, then 7, then 9. just like it. Start with one gel, gradually build up slowly. When should you take water? Some gels you don't need water at all. Some you need water with them. So figure out what type of gel works for your body and when you need to do it. And always do it gradually throughout your weeks and months leading up to the marathon.
Awesome, thank you. I do want to point out, folks, we do have 2 races coming up, one this weekend, one next week, so there's a bit pickup going on over to the side. So it will be a little lively, but if you cannot hear us, please do let us know. So moving on to the next question, I know this is going to be a favorite for everybody. We have just recently hit temperatures that are the highest recorded in the history of, temperature being recorded, I guess. So it's really hot. And folks are out there, I hope everybody's out there practicing their runs. This summer in general has been a hot one. We've had some really warmer temperatures. So I do want to ask our panelists, Jason, what would you say nutrition changes should be based on the temperature as people are doing their practice runs and preparing for the marathon in November?
Yeah, running in this heat is not fun. So with that being said, greater heat and greater humidity pretty much increases your need for just about everything related to fueling your run. So when I think about what you need, you kind of need what I call the big 3, fluid, electrolytes, and carbs. So in hotter weather, you're going to probably be sweating more, and your sweat is not as efficiently or effectively cooling you off, especially in humid weather. So you're going to probably need more fluid. You're going to be burning greater amount of fuel per mile run than a more temperate environment, so you're going to need more carbs. And then the electrolytes help tell your body where to shuttle all those things properly, so you're going to need more of that too. So if you have a plan around training, let's say, okay, I'm going to take in this amount of carbs, fluid, electrolytes in a moderate environment, you should test those things and maybe change them for a hotter humid environment. We do things like sweat rate testing, where you'll measure your body weight before and after a run. Your sweat rate is going to be different when it's 75 and pleasant versus 90 and awful. And so knowing those differences and doing those tests can actually help you dial in, I know if I'm racing in a moderate environment, I need this fuel. If I'm racing in a hot, humid environment, I need this amount more. And then you can really personalize it to what you need.
Great, thank you, Jason. And Steve, from a coaching perspective, with it being so hot, talk to us about adapting training due to the weather and to make sure runners are properly trained, and also how to stay cool on these runs without carrying fans, like portable fans.
I had a run this morning at 5 a.m. and it was still hot, but it was better than running at 9 a.m., guys. So as soon as you can, set that alarm early if you have to run, especially on days when it's going to get 90, 95 degrees. It's going to be hot, but it can be done by 9 o'clock. It's going to be a lot better out there. Dress in white, cool layers. It'll keep the sun off you. Sunscreen, no matter if it's cloudy or not out there. It's going to be a lot better out there. What was the other question? How to adapt to it? How to adapt to it. So I always think of running in the heat. There's a saying, they say running in the heat is a poor man's altitude. So you actually do acclimate to it. It actually does give you a little bit, better endurance when you're out there in the heat. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get used to it. Now, maybe at 90 degrees, but when it gets 70, 80 degrees, it takes about 2 weeks to get used to that heat change. You will get used to it. It's just getting out the door as often as you can, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever your training plan says. Get out the door, get that running. The first week or two, it will be hot, but you will get used to it. And then I promise you, come August, September, October, when it gets cool, your miles time is going to seem so much easier out there. Because every single year, we have group training right now in the park. Day 1 today of group training, they're all complaining about how hot it is. But come next month, they're going to be doing a lot better because they're going to be used to running in this weather. So get used to it. Run when you can, when it's not sunny outside, light clothes. As Jason said, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Even when you're not running, always be hydrated throughout the day.
Great, and I think with everything you all have shared, now is the perfect time to start practicing, right? 16 weeks out, folks. 16 weeks out, okay? There's going to be a quiz at the end of this. So Amy, talk to us about hitting the wall. So runners, they tend to hit the wall during races. It also sometimes happens in training. Also, some folks here may not know what hitting the wall is. How can they avoid it?
So hitting the wall, let's go over what that is. So your body can store up to about 90 minutes worth of carbohydrate. That's what you're doing during this training cycle. Over the 4 months, you're training your body to store more glycogen. And your body will adapt. As you run, your body adapts by storing more glycogen. So by the time you start your race in November, you're going to have a maximum amount of glycogen stores in your body, which is going to help you to run for longer periods of time. But you're still at around that 90-minute time. So after 90 minutes, your body uses up all the available glycogen, which is your fastest way to convert energy, and you can sustain faster speeds with that glycogen. And then it has to switch into another form of energy production, which is like using fat or protein for energy, and that's a lot slower. And that's why after that period where you use up all your glycogen, you feel lousy. Has that ever happened to anybody? That's happened to me, yeah. So the things that cause that are going out too fast. Like you do your training plan, you follow this awesome training plan, you get to the start and you're on the Verrazano Bridge, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I made it here. I'm gonna go really fast. I feel amazing. That taper was too long and you're just loaded with energy. So don't do that. Have a coach and listen to the paces, especially in the first 5 miles, and stick to those. You don't wanna burn through. It's kind of like pressing the pedal down on the car all the way, and your body's just going to use up a lot more of that very, very valuable glycogen. So the other thing that happens is people start their fueling too late. Again, you feel amazing. You haven't run as hard for those 3 weeks of taper. You're just dying to get out onto that course and see what you could do. And then you get caught up in the whole New York energy. And if you've done New York, or if you haven't, there's a lot of energy. So stick to your plan and don't go out too fast, and start your fueling when you're supposed to. You may feel full, you might feel maybe your fueling was a slightly off. Still stick to your plan of what you kind of set ahead of time. Maybe you need to write that down on your arm. I've done that. Written it down my arm so I know that I need to fuel at certain times. You could do the 30 every 30, so you know that every 30 minutes that you're taking in something. Or maybe you have mile markers that you have determined through your training or with your coach that are ideal for taking in your fluids or your gels. So have a plan and stick to it, taking into account the hydration. If it's cooler on race day, you don't need to hydrate as aggressively as you are right now. So you'll gradually start to learn what your body needs as it gets closer to race day. And one other thing, bring more than you think you need. Highly recommend that. There's so many times where I might start a race and I'm a little hungry and there's no more food and you're standing at the start line and you need just a little bit of extra. So have an extra one, you can always throw it away.
I've dropped one before by accident too. Mile 20, I dropped it, and I was like, I'm not going to go back and get it.
No way, your legs
I'm getting
hurt.
this PR, guys.
Yeah. So yes, so if you might drop it, or you're a little extra hungry, or for whatever reason, have an extra. You can't open it. That can also be a big issue. Practice opening it while you're running. During Boston this year, it was pouring rain, and I was like fumbling trying to get the gels open. I'm like, I wish I would have thought of this ahead of time. So be aware of that kind of stuff.
I'd also say check the weather forecast.
Yes.
Because it was pouring during the last big race that we had, the Brooklyn half. Maybe grab Ziploc bags and store some stuff in there in your pockets. I don't know, just a thought. So one of the things that Amy mentioned, Steve, was work with a coach. And I just want to talk about that a little bit. What are some resources that we at New York Roadrunners might provide where folks can become a part of a training program or have a coach? Because again, a lot of folks running for the first time, they may not necessarily have a coaching plan.
So even elite athletes use coaches, guys. Coaches, I think I'm a firm believer in everyone deserves a coach no matter what your distance, no matter how far along your running journey is. A coach is not just there to get you a PR. A coach is there for you for the long haul. It's someone who's going to be with you for year over year. If you use a coach for 6 months, they're not going to get to know you that much. They're going to learn you over time. So that coach is there to adapt your training. I'm going out of town next week, and guys, I know I'm not going to get 40 miles in. My coach is going to adjust my plan so I can maybe get a little run in before we go to the beach on Thursday, but they're going to pull back a little bit, and then they're also going to help me say, when I get back, I shouldn't do what I would have done if I wasn't going out of town. I should probably pull back in 2 weeks because I'm just coming back. I'm not sure how to do that, the proper way to do that, but my coach has years and years of experience that can adapt my training to me. So you want that coach to avoid, once again, avoiding injuries, so you don't need to go to HSS for many reasons. I love HSS, but not for injuries. So you don't get injured along the way, maybe doing too much, too fast, too soon. So they're going to pull you back when you need to. You're going to feel, oh, my knee's twinkling. Okay, don't do your long run. Pull back. We're going to cross train for 30 minutes instead. They're going to adjust our programs. We do have training programs at New York Roadrunners. If you're unsure, like I said, our group training program is out there right now, our day one. So we do have in-person group training. We have our coaching program online for the marathon. Run Coach will help you get to the start line with a coach out there. So a lot of opportunities at New York Roadrunners to have a coach with you alongside you. I also just like, because you're not by yourself. If you have like, oh, that run didn't go well, but I don't know why. I fueled, I paced. It wasn't hot out. I wore the right clothes. Why didn't it go well? They can help diagnose really what happened, help you remember to write stuff down. So come race day, you wrote down 45 degrees, I wore this t-shirt. It worked really well, or it didn't work, so you know what to wear on race day.
Awesome. So tap into other people's expertise. I know we've shared a lot of great information. We're not going to quiz you. I was just kidding. So if you don't remember the 30 for 30 or all the other great bits of information that the panelists have shared, you can go back and watch the YouTube recording. That will be available on the New York Roadrunners YouTube page. Again, apologies. The captions are auto-generated, so there may be some mistakes in there. So we'll move into the last set of questions that I have for the panelists, but we'll take questions from the audience as well. So if you have questions in mind, hold on to those. We'll get to you in a few minutes. Also, for folks on the live stream on YouTube as well as Facebook, please feel free to add those questions in the chats. Coach David is taking a look at the chat to make sure we get those questions in as well. Okay, so some final thoughts. Coach Steve, what would you say are your final suggestions or thoughts for our runners out there, and how can they get the most out of 16 weeks of training?
If you're the first time running New York City Marathon, one more time, how many? There's a lot of people. Wow. So I think what happens a lot of times with new marathon runners, beginners, we go out, we see our plan, it says run 4 days a week. So we do the same run every day of the week because we know our 4-mile route. I know mine. I go down Montrose, I turn right at the school, I go back, and I'm at home. Super easy, right? That's my 4-mile run. I don't want to do that for 16 weeks. You want your training plan and your weekly runs to look like the most epic mixtape in the world. And we all made epic mixtapes. They have fast songs, they have slow songs, your heart rate goes up, down. You have mixtapes with a group of people singing. You have runs with people by themselves singing. So your runs should look like the best mixtape. You have runs with people. You have runs by yourself. You have runs that you're going fast. You have runs where you go slow. You have runs with hills. You have runs with downhill. So it should vary. And I think what a lot of new runners do, it gets, by the time you get to September, October, you're not motivated anymore. Right now, we're probably all motivated, minus the heat. We're ready to train. We want to get out there, get the mileage in. We want a PR or a first race. But then come October, it's been going on 20 miles again. It's coming up. So change up your routine as much as you can, especially early on. Learn new 4-mile routes around your town. Try to figure out every single route in your street or your town. Hit everything. Run with different people. Find a group to run with. Any way you can stay motivated out there is going to help you now. Try to learn those mantras. Practice those. Remember your why and why you signed up for this. Is it a charity you're running with? Is it you dared your best friend to run and beat them out there? Whatever you can, find your why. Remember that and mix up those runs throughout your training to make it more eventful and meaningful out there.
Thank you. And I always say finding your why is great life advice, not just running advice. Jason, what would you say are your final thoughts for runners to make sure that they keep their nutrition in check?
Sure. So first question I'll ask is, how many people here have a nutrition plan? You all do, because you're eating. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. So whatever you're doing is your current nutrition plan. So the first thing to do is just get an understanding of what you're doing. Maybe just, again, write down what you're eating for a couple of days. Not for judgment, just for awareness, right? And say, okay, am I feeling well? What am I getting in? What am I not? You can decode that. And then creating an updated plan based off maybe how you're feeling and evaluating and updating that as you go through. I think the most important thing is that you stay aware and check in with your body physically, nutritionally, and that when you are training, we like to think about what do I have before? What do I have during? What do I have after? Great, that's super, super important, especially on race day and with training. But the truth is your body's ability to recover, adapt, and do it again requires 24 hours of work. That you're fueling not just around your training times, but it's your meals, it's your snacks, it's all of it. Your body has that time to get ready and replenish for that next run. And it's that cycle of doing that over and over is really what's going to give you the adaptation you need to perform your best on race day.
Thank you, Jason. So what we took away from that is everybody here, even though there was one person who raised their hand, has a nutrition plan. I guess what we need to do now is figure out how this is going to work out best for you as you work your way up to the TCS New York City Marathon in November. 16 weeks. I'm going to keep repeating that. And Amy, last but not least, do you have any final thoughts for runners on how they can properly fuel this summer?
Yeah, so, starting with that 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour on your longer runs, and then about 4 ounces or more of fluids every 15 minutes. So start there. If you need a sweat test, then you can perform a sweat test. You can follow up with us afterwards and we can explain what that is. I think that's very valuable to do in this hot weather condition. Also, figure out what works for you and repeat it over and over. You don't need to try every single thing that's out there. There's not one better product. If you find that toast with peanut butter is your go-to before a run, stick with that. And just because someone else is doing something different, it doesn't mean that that's right for you. So do what is best for you and what supports you and your body and how you feel. Experience is the best teacher. So try different things, but then record it and know what works for you. You can't hit a PR if you're not fueling and hydrating well. Or you can't even finish a race if you're not fueling and hydrating well. I think it's great that you guys are all here to hear this talk and you guys are all dialed in. And if you guys have any additional questions, I guess we're gonna lead on to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Yes, it's awesome that so many of you are here and the folks that are joining online, especially for those who it's your first marathon. We have, as I said, a great panel of experts here, and we'll continue this panel series throughout the months leading up to the marathon. Please feel free to ask the panelists after the panel if you have any specific questions for yourself. But we're going to open this up for Q&A now. All we ask is if you can just keep your question brief, and if you've run the marathon before, let us know. If this is your first marathon, let us know as well. So let's go ahead and take some questions from the audience. Does anybody in the audience here have any questions? Okay, we have a couple of folks in the back. Coach David's going to come around with the mic. Please introduce yourself.
Hi. I've yet to come up with a sunscreen that actually works past 10 minutes, especially in weather like this. I can't come up with anything that actually protects after a little while. A sunscreen. Yeah.
I missed the key word there.
Yeah. That's,
I think this feeling as they said the key word.
That's pretty
I heard
key.
everything about the key word: sunscreen, food, water.
Yeah. So.
Do you guys have any tips on sunscreen recommendations or?
I mean, I like CeraVe. I think it's light and it stays on. CeraVe. I think that brand is really good.
How do you spell that?
CEREVE. It's you could get it on Amazon or did I say it wrong?
Some shaking heads. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, thank you for correcting me. I like that one. I think it doesn't clump. It stays on and it's pretty good.
Okay, so I guess it's CeraVe. CEREVE. That is the recommendation. Okay, next person. Okay.
Hi. Oh no, okay. Hi, my name is Raquel. This is my first marathon. Can you give some advice about shoes and training with different shoes? Thank you.
Chews, gummies, hot training with different kinds. Shoes or chews? Shoes? I thought it was chews, like energy chews. I'm like, wow, going different. Okay. Feedback.
All I heard was
Sunscreen,
choose
shoes.
gummies, and I was like, that's not what they were asking.
Okay, shoes. Sorry about that. So it's kind of like every other thing. It's individual. It depends. What I run in is not going to work for these three people up on stage. Go to your local running store. Is what we tell runners. I used to work at a local running store in Brooklyn, so we had people come in. We'll watch you on a treadmill. Usually, they'll watch you on a treadmill or they'll watch you walk, see what happens to your foot as you kind of land, and basically shoe off that. You probably neutral or stability, and they'll recommend the shoe that fits best for your foot. Wear it for 10 miles. Go for a short run, see outside how it feels, and once you find something, keep it and buy 1, 2, 3, or 4 more of that because they're going to come out with an update in 3 years. It's going to be a different model, and most running shoes will last about 400 to 500 miles. So keep tracking them somehow. Strava, you can track your miles on that app, which it's free, so it's nice to use. And then I was gonna say one more thing about running shoes.
I write the date on my shoe when I get it.
Brighter the better the shoe. No, I'm just kidding. Find a shoe that works for you and not your. It's all individualized for sure.
And I believe they can also ask questions to the folks at the New Balance Hub that we have here at the Run Center, right?
Yeah, they'll do a cool 3D foot scan up there. If you want to do that, it's like a cool futuristic foot scan. Well, they'll scan it and see how your foot bones in it. I don't know how it works, but it's really cool. That's new technology that I didn't have when I worked at a running store. But they'll do that as well up there, Sarah. So after this, you can talk to them.
Awesome. And I really love the advice of writing the date on the shoe. Do you do that in Sharpie?
I do it in a Sharpie, and you got to make sure it doesn't rub off or that you can see it, and then you know when you can easily calculate when you need to get new shoes.
Great advice. Next question.
Hi, I'm Frank. I am a new runner, started in December, running the New York City Marathon this year with Team for Kids. So I feel very supported in many, many ways. Like I've got the Strava, I've got the Run Coach, I've got the Team for Kids Wednesday and Saturday. The piece I feel like I'm missing is like the nutrition plan. Like I feel like there's a gap there. So one like a Strava or a Run Coach, some subscription that I could plug in numbers and it'll spit out stuff. And then two is actual products where they can just mail me stuff to put in my refrigerator, and I just
It's ambassador,
eat it.
man. That's called a brand
Yes.
ambassador.
Love that.
No, is there any app out there that does something like running coaching where it's like you eat XYZ, here's running nutrition that can provide you support for running? I don't know.
That delivers the product to you.
It could be two separate things. One could be the app. I put in my weight, my running, my whatever.
It just tells you how much you need.
Yeah,
My
and then
fitness
the
pal.
other one that sells me the stuff.
I don't know of any. I have not used those. Usually, it's the client has to buy the product, and we go over because it also like Jeremy was saying, like you change the amount that you're using over time. Like it's not static. The amount that you're using is not static, and you might change, and maybe that gel doesn't work for you, or the goo, or the blocks. So you have to be adaptable to try things that do work.
I will say, there's ways of, if you're, the nerdy numbers type like me, you can go in and calculate, okay, it's age, height, weight, activity level, blah, blah, blah. You can calculate approximate calorie needs, and then you can go and say, okay, well, I run this speed, and this is my metabolic equivalent, and I can figure all that stuff out. The challenge is, that spits out a number. That number in and of itself isn't 100% accurate, and then you have to actually calculate when you're eating exactly how many calories you're eating, and that number isn't 100% accurate. So you can definitely, there are Hello.
I blame David, by the way.
So there's definitely calorie calculators out there, and you can estimate those things if you Google search that stuff, and you can come up with it. Okay, if you want to go to a website that gives you calorie counts, like on MyFitnessPal, CalorieKing.com. There's tons of stuff out there where you can crunch numbers if you really want to, and do that. And I do that for some people, and then figure that out. And then you can choose the products. You can say, okay, I want to go buy this product, that product. The only there's a place I know that does drop ship. I have no involvement with them besides the fact that I've used them a couple times. It's called The Feed, thefeed.com. You can buy different products from them, almost like a single serving versus having to buy a whole box. You can try stuff that way. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to someone, maybe it's a business opportunity for you. You can start a company that does dropship meals for runners.
I was just about to say, our experts don't know of any such service. So for the entrepreneurs out there, there's a need and no service available. So think about that as you're training for the marathon. And let's see, do we have another question in the audience?
Oh, actually, I want to run one last thing for you that might be helpful. USOC, the U.S. Olympic Committee, has a really, really good resource called the Athlete's Plate. It's a very rough estimate, but it's good to give you a sense of, based on how much I'm training, how hard I'm training, what percentage of my plate should be from carbs versus protein versus veggies. The USOC Athlete's Plate, it's helpful for a rough estimate.
Where can they find that information?
Google USOC Athlete's Plate.
USOC
Athlete's
Athlete's
Plate.
Plate. Got it. Thank you.
So my name is Julie, my first marathon. And I happened to get lucky to do also the Chicago Marathon. So any suggestions in terms of nutrition and training to and recovery between the two marathons?
I'll do
Yeah,
training
so
part first. and that
October
one
9th is the-
It's 4 weeks,
or
right? I
8th.
think it's 4 weeks apart, right?
Yes, it's even less than 4 weeks.
So 3 weeks, 4
Lucky,
weeks, I mean,
right?
does it, that
I've
doesn't
done
matter.
that. I've done that. I can.
Yeah, I think find one is a goal race. So ideally, Chicago maybe is a great goal race because it's flat, it's first. I've done it, but it's a great race. And then New York has a celebration. I don't say take the watch off, but that mentality of it doesn't matter what time you're running. In between those 3-4 weeks, whatever it is, recovery. Number one, so you could proteins, carbohydrates, whatever you need to do to recover for those times. Maybe shakeout runs like workouts, no long runs. You don't really need that much. Cross training would be great. Cycling, elliptical, keep the body moving, but you don't need to go out and run another 20 miles.
This is
a
very
week.
helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think that's all very important. I did that. That was crazy, and it's hard. And I think that's great advice that you're giving her, to make that one race is your goal race, and then the second one is to enjoy. Yeah, but the recovery, I would say, is focus on like getting in lots of carbohydrates immediately after. The quicker you can start the recovery, the quicker your body can get adapted to running again, because that's going to be hard to start running again right after. But lots of food. You'll be traveling and you'll be excited from that Chicago Marathon, but definitely get in carbohydrates, proteins, and like a lot of omega-3s, which can help with reducing inflammation.
What's that?
Omega-3 fatty
omega-3,
acids, so like avocado, nuts, olive oil. Tart cherry juice is also great for anti-inflammatory. I would definitely focus on that, and salmon, and just eating, as many of those foods as you can.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
so
just want to
much.
go back to one of the questions that we had earlier about the any service that sends these products to your doorstep. Since we don't know about that, I just want to ask the panelists here: do you have a recommendation or what works for you? Any specific brands, any gels, any items that you specifically do carry in those longer runs?
I use a flip belt for my long runs to carry everything, and then I have there's actually New Balance sells a pair of shorts that has for men. I like it for men because a lot of men's shorts don't have good pockets. I've learned. I'm sure female has the same thing. It's a pocket issue, but there's a kind that has the inner liner and then a pocket on the inside of the inner liner, which I like. It doesn't bounce a lot, so that's what I use.
And any specific products you like to carry?
Because I like SIS because we have it at races, and she said before you can carry less out there if you know it's on the course.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because you're carrying so much stuff. So it's like you do all your training runs and then you get to your start and you're like, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? I have a pair of shorts that I like, or I have leggings that have a lot of pockets. Mine is on shorts that are great. There's so many pockets on there, so you can fit a lot of stuff in there. I use for training, I'll do like a Camelback 1.5 liter vest. And sometimes I won't fill it all the way because I won't need it all the way. So I'll do like half filled and make sure you get the air out so it's not sloshing. And then I stuff it with lots of gels and always one extra gel. Always. Always more than you need. And especially if you're carrying that, I think it's really great.
The one that you can't, that can be, tossed out or not opened, I would say I carry 3 extras just in case. Do we have any questions from the audience on the live stream?
We sure do. I'm going to make my way back over there, but I know we had one question around hydration recommendations in terms of the gear available to folks while they're training, be it a hydration pack or a belt. What are some of the options runners have to hydrate as they're running, and is any of this equipment allowed during the race?
Yeah, so the vest is great, I think, especially if you live in a place that doesn't have water fountains. So I'm out in New Jersey, there's no water fountains where I live. But if you're in Central Park every day, and in West Side Highway, Prospect Park, there's water fountains there. So figure out what's around you. Waist packs work. I carry a water bottle. Again, I don't really have water fountains around me. Just know, like the Camelback she carries is not allowed in the NYR Marathon, so security won't let you take that. In the marathon, we do have water and Gatorade basically every single mile besides 5, 7, and 9, I think it is. So every mile besides those 3 miles, we have water and Gatorade. So, whatever works best for you. The belts, the handhelds are allowed in the marathon, but a Camelback is not allowed in the marathon. Or a lot of people also drive out, like if it's like an out back run, they'll place water out beforehand, like, oh, I'm placed by this tree, by that fence, and by that rock, and then on the way they'll grab that water along the way.
I mean, I've done a lot of creative things in the city. I just carry $10 or something and stop and get nutrition, out on the street if I need to. Or you ask a family member or beg a partner to meet you at some random spot to give you a water bottle. You can do things like that as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of people and like what you do, especially if you like have people come in and like cheer you on, like on race day, be at mile 20, please, with my bottle. And so like you can definitely coordinate those things along with everything what everybody else said.
So start recruiting your cheer zone now. Put it on their calendar so they know when they need to be there at which mile to give you those products. Coach David, do we have anybody else online?
We sure do, yeah. We've gotten a lot of questions online. Arvind asked on YouTube if you have any tips for the infamous bridges during the New York Marathon and how they can start training hills now to prepare for those.
So the question was about bridges in New York City Marathon, how to train for the bridges. So it's interesting because I think people think New York City Marathon is a lot hillier than it is. We look at the elevation like, oh, that's so many hills. I consider 3 hills in this marathon. 3 hills, that is not a lot. And the first hill, the Verrazano Bridge, guess what? You're not going to notice it. It's actually the biggest hill on the course. You don't notice it because you're so excited, as you said before. You're going to go, hopefully not too fast, but the cannon's going to go off, Frank Sinatra's going to play, and you're not going to notice the first hill. Second hill, Queensboro Bridge. Guess what? It's only mile 16. So you're still not really racing. You're still conservative pace. We're going nice and conservative here. You should be controlled at that point. It is a climb, but it's conservative pace. The one that people don't know about because it's not and every other bridge before, the Pulaski Bridge, it's noticeable, but it's not like Central Park. It's very minimal compared to everything. Madison Bridge, same thing. What people don't notice is Fifth Avenue Hill. It's not a bridge. It's a hill. If you ran it right now, you wouldn't notice it, but because of its mile 21 of the course, you notice that part of that hill. So that's what hits people a lot. I remember running the first time in 2010, and I hit that, and I was like, oh man, is my race over? I'm hitting like very slow pace all of a sudden. I didn't know I was on a hill. So know it's there. Maybe at the end of your long runs, run a hill at the end of those long runs. But once again, it's not too hilly. So maybe some hill repeats the Queensboro Bridge. It is noticeable. You'll notice it. It's very quiet, but you have First Avenue after it. So you'll make it up. You have to walk it. Cool, no problem. Walk the bridge. That's fine. But it's not as hilly of a marathon as I think people see it as. We see Chicago, we see Berlin, London, Tokyo. They're all very flat. And New York does have some hills, but it's not that bad. You get some hills in your training. Long runs add hills purposely to it. So if you're at mile 16 of your long run Harlem Hill maybe 2 times just to have that practice. So I usually don't assign, when I'm coaching athletes, I don't assign too many hill repeats. It's more hills in long runs for this course.
Thank you. That's some great advice from your experience that you're sharing with us. And there will be more sessions in the future on the race course, so you can keep an eye out for those. I think I saw a hand here somewhere for a question.
Hi, how are you? I'm Jocelyn. First time I'm going to run the marathon. And this has been a learning process. And I wanted to ask about the gels. I know there's so many with like caffeine, and there's some just regular hydration. Some that they say extra energy. So could you expand a little bit more on that? Because, there's so many out there.
So, I mean, that's a preference, taking caffeine during the race. And I think they have around, I think it's like anywhere from 25 to like 100 milligrams of caffeine. I think that's a preference and how you feel. Like some people feel like it gives them a kick. There's no magic for caffeine. Some people if you take too much of it, you can get jittery, nervous, stomach ache. It can have a lot of adverse effects. So I would say you try it, and maybe later on in the course, you can use those caffeinated gels. They do take at least a half an hour to work, so don't take it like as you're finishing. That's not going to help you. But give it some time, and I would try and maybe like have a certain number that you would start with. Like maybe you would start with like using 2 and see how your body feels. I would practice with it and see how that feels.
Yeah, so there's the research behind use of caffeine. Again, first and foremost, if it makes you feel jittery or sends you to the bathroom, don't use it. But for those who do tolerate it, the research is generally around like 2 to 3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So you can calculate about how much you need and dose it appropriately. And then if you were trying to do it beforehand, it would be like 1 to 2 hours before your key run, and then if it's a longer run, you could redose 2 to 3 hours in if you want to like plan all this out exactly. In essence, what caffeine does is it reduces the rating of perceived exertion. In other words, it makes you feel like what you're doing isn't as hard, even though it still is hard. The main thing I tell people when you're doing that sort of thing, yes, it'll give you a little more zip, it'll make you feel a little faster. You still need your fuel, because if you bonk, you're still going to bonk. If you run out of fuel, if your gas tank runs out, you're still going to run out of gas, no matter how good you feel on that last drop. If your tank is gone, you're gone. So you can use it if you tolerate it, but just make sure that all the other points of your fueling plan are on, and that's just the cherry on top.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
This is David's workout today, by the way.
Hi, my name is Carolyn, and I know like to prepare you should just be eating like well-balanced meals, not just on running days and stuff, but I was wondering if there's any supplements or anything that you guys would recommend that to help with like maybe recovering and just if you're not getting enough of certain, I don't know, vitamin or something.
So that's a great question. I get that question a lot. My response to supplements is only take it if you need it or you have a known gap in your diet. I think supplements can be very dangerous. It's not regulated by the FDA, so you don't really know what's in the bottles. There are some ways to have third-party testing with using like NSF or USP seals on those supplements, but I think in general, if you're working through a marathon training cycle, your liver is working in overdrive. So to take a supplement, it is a concentrated amount of a substance. It bypasses the gut for digestion and hits the bloodstream and then goes to your liver. So I think you don't want to tax your liver. So I think if you have a known deficiency, or if you've talked to your doctor or a health professional about whether or not you need something, I think that's kind of where I would start. Are there any specific ones that I would say blanketly that you should take? I think checking iron periodically is helpful, especially if you've been iron deficient in the past. But I wouldn't take it unless you know that you have a low iron, because that is very dangerous.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think, unless you can stand up here and say, I have dialed in my nutrition plan across everything else first, and it's spot on. I know exactly my carbs, my electrolytes, my fluid, my protein is all spot on. Those are really the key things. So when you look at like supplementation, the term supplement can also mean like if you can't get it in normally, right? So even using a gel is considered a supplement, because it's not a food. If you can't get in enough protein due to some reason, yeah, maybe if you had some whey protein or some other protein, because it's not, I'm assuming we're both food first dietitians, that get it in through food if you can. These are supplements. And then the other side, to what Amy was saying, is more like the medical supplementation. If you are vitamin D deficient, you need vitamin D. If you're iron deficient, you need iron. That covers 97% of probably what you would need supplementation for and still do really, really well. We had a caffeine discussion. Most other things that have research behind it don't always translate actually into like long endurance sports anyways. So again, it's like dialing those pieces in will get you 99% of your results.
Awesome, thank you both. So we are almost at time. Let's go ahead and take one last question. Do we have something online?
We sure do. We had a runner write in from Texas where they are experiencing some extreme heat. And this runner wanted to know y'all's thoughts on treadmill training. Can someone get by training for a marathon only on treadmills? Are there any downfalls to training on the treadmill?
Yeah,
The size the answer.
I feel like two different ways.
great,
I say, yes, if it's unsafe outside, whether heat, thunderstorm, ice storm, whatever you need, treadmill is the best option in those. So safety is first. Yes, do treadmills. I only caution maybe from an injury perspective, because if you're training only on treadmills, and I don't think that's not the question, but I'm taking the extreme. If you're only on treadmills, your bones are not getting the strength you get from running on hard pavement that will do the race. I don't know if there's science behind you more injury prone. If you're only on treadmills, I say just like the best mixtape in the world, you want to run on various different surfaces. So treadmill, track, trails, and road, because all those affects your bones and muscles differently. So in the heat, if it's 95 degrees, high humidity, Texas is probably 100 degrees, high humidity, whatever it is, treadmill, drink water, try to watch Netflix while you're on the treadmill as long as possible. when it's safe, head outside and get outdoor running because you're going to get more benefits. Because your race is outdoors, so train outdoors. Try to get your race as close as possible to your training should be as close as possible to the race as you can in your training.
I would just add one thing. I think that's really helpful. And you don't get an opportunity to practice your hydration as well because the hydration indoors is a completely different beast. Like the air is not moving. You might have a different sweat rate. You might be dry. There might be a fan on you, so you don't even know if you're sweating. So you won't get that opportunity to practice the hydration, even taking sips of water while you're trying to run. So it might be a little bit different on the indoor running.
Did you want to add anything, Jason?
No, that's really good.
Okay, he just said don't get injured. That's the answer. Okay, folks, so we are at time. I want to thank you all for joining us here live, as well as those folks joining us on YouTube and Facebook, the live streams. Again, a lot of great advice shared here at the panel. You can also talk to our panelists as we end, and you can also go back and watch the YouTube recording and maybe get a little bit more information out of that. This is part of a training series that we are doing for the 2023 TCS New York City Marathon. This is the first session. We have 3 more sessions coming up, August 17th, September 21st, and October 12th, and those invites will be going out on Eventbrite. You can find that information there and on our social media pages. And I want to thank our wonderful experts for sharing their expertise and their experiences with us. Have a wonderful, wonderful time training for the marathon, trial and error, get those plans in, the nutrition plans, and put this as a block on people's calendars now. And Jason.
How many more weeks?
How many more weeks?
We know.
Awesome.
Take some Gatorade or I got to take it home.
Yes, please take some
Gatorade. Come
Gatorade.
to Jersey
And
with me.
we'll see you next time.